As a rather more contemporary theologian, Bultmann said, the problem with mysticism is it begins in mist and ends in schism. And it's terribly disappointing to hear that those who want to stand up for a church that is based on a founder who was put to death by capital punishment, who, for all we know from what he said, seemed to be very, very understanding, imaginative, pure, simple, remarkably intelligent in a Socratic kind of way. And he is represented by, really, I'm afraid, pretty low-rent intelligences and pretty low-rent imaginations. They are not connected at the moment, it seems to me, with the aspirations and desires of the human race. There's such an opportunity, owning 1 billion souls at baptism, that can never be unowned, to answer that lady's question, until she's excommunicated. So yes, you are counted. It's such an opportunity to do something remarkable to make this planet better. And it's an opportunity that is constantly and arrogantly being avoided, and I'm sorry for that.
Okay, thank you. Final statement from Conservative MP Anne Widdecombe for the motion that the Catholic Church is a force for good in the world.
Right. Can I first answer the point raised by the lady over there about how she'd been helping women who were in danger of death even from pregnancy and childbirth, and answer the allegation behind it, which is that somehow the reason why so many women in the Third World continue to go on having children beyond a safe point is all because it's the wicked Catholic Church. Let me point out the obvious, that if you're in a country where the mortality rate is extremely high, where you do not expect the majority of your children to survive into adulthood, and there is no convenient abbey field to nip to, the reason that you have children is for security in your old age. And in case anybody thinks I'm making that up, may I point out that I did actually go out with an aid project to Zambia, and I asked woman after woman about why they had such large families when they couldn't feed them, and the answer was always the same. Somebody has got to look after me when I am old. Let's forget that. And then, of course, we have had all the usual stuff about how the Catholic Church, being against condoms, has apparently caused untold misery. I'm not going to cite the Catholic Church now. I'm going to cite people who wouldn't want to be associated with the Catholic Church. Dr. Edward Green, Liberal, agnostic, Harvard Centre for Population and Development Studies, writes, 20 years into the pandemic, there is no evidence that more condoms leads to less AIDS. We're simply not seeing what we expected. And he goes on to say that in Africa, where many have to go miles even to get an aspirin, a number of researchers are now questioning whether the universal ideal of perfect condom use, because that is what is required, with a regular supply is quite simply unattainable. John Richens of the Centre for Sexual Health and HIV Research says, we should ask why condom promotion is apparently not having much effect in most developing countries. And finally, Dr. Trevor Stammers, none of these people Catholics. There are no examples to date from any country in the world that has reversed a generalized epidemic by means of condom promotion alone. Now, if we are true to wanting to help people, if we are really true to it, then we should face up to that perhaps rather inconvenient fact that what was expected hasn't actually happened. I could go on, I could quote UNAIDS, I could quote the Wellcome Trust, research after research now suggesting that condoms actually are not the answer that they were once thought to be. And when I said that our opponents are obsessed with sex, I meant it in this way. The only nastiness tonight, and there's been virtually none, the only nastiness tonight came when Stephen Fry accused the Archbishop of being sexually dysfunctional. because he said that celibate priests and monks had no right to tell him what to do because they were, and I quote his words, sexually dysfunctional. As I've said, our opponents always try to home in on sex when the teachings of the Church, which are, after all, only about the stability of family, the maintenance of fidelity, the virtue of chastity, when the Church teaches that as one part of all its teaching, I do sometimes despair at the way that these debates always come back to that. So I'm very pleased to have been here tonight, despite the fact that I think the incoming poll was slightly discouraging. I'm very pleased to have been here with the Archbishop and with the two gentlemen opposite, and thank you for the opportunity.
Against the motion, Christopher Hitchens.
Those who ask confessions from other people should be willing to make oneself. I am obsessed with sex. Ever since I discovered that my God-given male member was going to give me no peace, I decided to give it no rest in return. Seems fair to me. Now, two people asked me to be very quick and do world poverty and the Holocaust, and I'll do that. There is only one cure for world poverty that's ever been found or ever will be, and it's very simple. And it can be phrased very simply too. It's called the empowerment of women. Go to Bangladesh or Bolivia. I have to ask you to hold your applause, though I love you. Go to Bangladesh or Bolivia, give women control over their reproductive cycle, throw in a handful of corn if you can, make them not just the beasts of burden and the beasts of childbearing that they become, and the floor will rise, it just will. It never fails anywhere. Against this one solution, the Catholic Church has set its face. The efforts of the missionary church in the Third World mean more people die, not less. It's as simple as that. More famine, more disease, more ignorance, more random and avoidable death. To the Holocaust, sir. That the Church preached that the Jewish people were collectively responsible for the death of Christ until 1964, till nearly 20 years after the Nuremberg trials, may or may not have something to do with the availability of a reservoir of anti-Jewish hatred in countries like Poland, Spain, Italy, Germany, Austria, and elsewhere. I think it does have something to do with it, okay? The Ten Commandments, 3 of them are awe-inspiring. They're about being afraid of a totalitarian figure. 3 of them are ordinary morality. We know of no code of ethics ever found, and the Archbishop bears me out on this, that recommends murder, theft, or perjury. Putting adultery on the same level as that may not be morally advisable. Saying that covetousness should be considered in the same light as a crime, in other words, a thought crime. You're condemned now for something you're thinking, and it may be something that leads you to enterprise and emulation. That's forbidden too. That's very, very iffy, it seems to me, and there's a very iffy part of it which lumps those you mustn't covet in with the animals and the chattels and your property, and those who it lumps in are your womenfolk. And do you seriously expect to be taken seriously if you say that that commandment that does reduce women to beasts of burden and childbearers and chattel has nothing to do with the appalling position of women, not just in poorer societies but in ours as well? Again, for shame if you can feel it. Now, unanswered questions. Amazing. I asked, where is Cardinal Law, Bernard Law, and why? I have an authority here. He ducks the question. Anne Widdecombe, sorry, I've got one more thing to say about that. He also says that the Church advises against homosexuality. It teaches against it. No, it doesn't. Any more than it teaches against divorce or contraception. Where it can, it bans these things and punishes them and writes them into the criminal code. If all you were doing, sir, ma'am, were offering advice, we could probably be fine with it. No one, though they were asked repeatedly, would say whether they thought Stephen Fry, my friend, was in a state of mortal sin or not. They wouldn't tell you. Something about the question brought out their inner coward. Well, I say that homosexuality is not just a form of sex, it's a form of love, and it deserves our respect for that reason. that when my children were young, I'd have been proud to have Stephen as their babysitter, and I'd told them they were lucky. And if anyone came to my door as a babysitter wearing holy orders, I'd call first a cab and then the police.